Just as a follow up to that, there's always this discussion about the size versus the structure of any economy, right?
Yep.
Uh, I think India. So there is a really good article that came out a couple of months ago about India having brandless growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we are getting a lot of stuff done, but there are no Googles or Microsofts or Apples that are actually coming out of India. Okay,
Yep.
almost like it's again the recent Narayan Murthy comment that young
70
Indians
घंटे.
have to 70 घंटे काम करना है. It came with a certain degree of backlash. That I think Abhijit Iyer Mitra went on record saying that yeah, this is exactly why we are the coolies of the world or the back offices of the Western world. Okay. All that aside, my point that I'm trying to basically make is that problem is always in somewhat identifying the incentive. Okay.
Yeah.
Because Munger always says that show me the incentive, I will show you the outcome. Okay.
Correct.
And I'm asking about size versus structure because we have always prioritized for size over structure. Okay. You tie it to the culture point. Okay.
Yeah.
So my question is that if you are trying to grow to say not a China but a South Korea, okay, and you want to avoid being a Thailand, I'm setting the case very, very clear.
Absolutely.
If your goal to grow, then you have to. If your goal is to grow, then you have to assess how Thailand grew and stagnated, how
Yep.
China is growing. Now there is an argument even on China on whether it is on a hiatus or whether it is on a downturn. That is a different problem altogether. And
Yep.
what is rarely spoken about is South Korea. Okay,
Yep.
we need to hit 35,000 GDP per capita is my view.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep. Yep.
now the South Korean economy is structured in such a way was actually structured in such a way during the early days in the 60s, etc., to be able to have a scaffolding for that growth. Okay. Now, how do we take ideas like dominant assurance contracts, state capacity libertarianism to actually expand that structure to be able to withhold all that growth? And because we have a young demographic, see, my view is that Narayan Murthy's comment was not about doing 70 hours of coolie work. Okay.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
70 hours of doing work for yourself. Go out, build your startup. Go out, build your dreams. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's the effort it's going to take at a bare minimum. Okay. Now, my question to you is how do you build the scaffolding using an idea like dominant assurance contracts, state capacity libertarianism, etc.?
Okay, this is going to be a very long answer because there are many different things that I want to touch upon. Feel free to both interrupt me or stop me whenever you like.
Absolutely.
The first thing I'll begin with is culture in South Korea. So, two books that I'm going to refer to. One is a book called The Miracle by Michael Schumann, and the other is a book called How Asia Works by Joe Studwell. Both are fantastic books to read if you want to understand what sets apart, in the case of How Asia Works, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan from other Asian economies. This is not going to please any Indian listening to this, but according to Joe Studwell, the ASEAN nations are the failures in Asia. Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan are the successes. India doesn't even make it to the list of failures. Now, when it comes to South Korea, they did not focus on state capacity libertarianism in the 50s and the 60s. In fact, they focused only on state capacity.
Exactly.
Lovely
Yeah.
story, I can't remember where it comes from, is about how prominent industrialists in South Korea were rounded up by General Park soon after he became
The
the de facto
chaebols.
dictator. The chaebol, the heads of the chaebols, yes.
The heads of the chaebols.
They were rounded up and thrown in jail. You might ask why, and the answer was no particular crime. They were kept there for a while and then they were taken out and they were told, you either do what we tell you to do or you go back in jail. Now, forget libertarianism. This goes against any established norm in any civil society. But General Park's take was this is what is needed. And so, therefore, he focused more on state capacity than he did on libertarianism. Coming to your second point about how to avoid the stagnation that one sees in Thailand and one does not see in South Korea, a question that I love to ask foreigners is name one thing in your home that has been manufactured by an Indian company, a mixer grinder, a lamp, a television, whatever it may be. And pretty soon people realize that it's quite likely that no such thing exists.
Yeah.
This goes back to your earlier point about how we never focused on homegrown brands and India being, in a sense, brandless growth. It's not just the large tech firms that you referred to. We don't have good manufacturing champions the world over.
Correct.
Thailand optimized for FDI. They optimize for getting firms from other countries to locate themselves in Thailand. South Korea said it doesn't matter how long it takes and it doesn't matter what needs to be done. We will have domestic champions become export leaders. So it took Hyundai decades, literally, to break into the American market. But today, Hyundai car is seen as a sign of quality. And again, people might be amazed to understand this, but in the 1950s, I was born in only 1982, but I've read that in the 1950s, सस्ता Japanese माल used to be a derogatory term. जैसे आजकल हम लोग कहते हैं सस्ता Chinese माल. So Japan graduated into being seen as a hallmark of quality. So did South Korea. And today you could argue about how successful it is, but China is doing the same thing. What India has not been able to do is it has not been able to use its state capacity in order to be able to develop global champions. And if you want to go down the South Korea route and ask how we reached $35,000, turns out it's actually something that you would perhaps not want to do because of the route that whether it is Japan, whether it is South Korea, they adopted. But a significant standard development literature seems to suggest that there is no alternative. In your path of development, you're going to have government take a leading role, except the leading role is one of Darwinian capitalism.
Yeah.
Which means, hey, you provide all the production linked incentives that you want to use a uniquely Indian phrase right now, but also use the incentive of the stick along with the carrot. मतलब पैसा दो, ठीक है, लो और करो तुमको जो करना है, नहीं कर पाए तो भैया डंडा पड़ने वाला है. That second part we have always missed. So sure, we don't have libertarianism. Our tragedy is we don't even have state capacity. We have only half of it. We provide the incentives, but only the positive ones, not the negative ones. And that's what allows companies in India to either skirt the rules or make sure that they enter into some kind of oligopolistic cozy up arrangement with the government. And I'm not referring to anything that's happening only now, throughout Indian history. And unfortunately, we have suffered as a consequence. So we have neither state capacity nor libertarianism. And unfortunately, we end up with the worst of all worlds.